Welcome back to Wealth Mavericks, the only podcast where we share the secrets the wealthy know to build generational wealth. And on today's episode, we're talking about the stages of an asset. Specifically, we're going to talk about the 4 stages of an asset. Bob has traditionally only talked about 3 stages, but at the end, we're going to share a 4th stage. After much pontification and ruminous thought, Bob has some new thoughts to share with us.
So assets take action. The different thing is that they don't actually have a brain and they're not tangible enough to make decisions. We do. So we, being the only asset with the brain, have to, in a plan, tell the asset what to do. Looking and understanding assets and taking that initial foundation of those 3 stages and expanding it into, well, shoot, every asset goes through this. And the IRS views each of these assets differently.
And we also have a new guest with us. So Erin Nevicosi, part of the Terra Firma team, is here with us, and she's going to be here with us each week, where we get to have fun hanging out and talking about all things wealth and business building. And so we're excited for today's episode. All right, as we kick off the episode, I do want to introduce Erin Nevicosi real quick. Erin is part of the Terra Firma team. Erin, would you just take a moment and say hello to the audience and really quickly just a little bit about your background and why you're here at Terra Firma?
Sure. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm a Wisconsin girl who moved to Arizona in 2020 and have been in marketing my whole career. I'm a mom of 3. And Joe, I met you 3 years ago. And out of all the people who've had a big impact on my life, you are at the top of that list. You were my sales coach at a previous job. And as fate would have it, we reconnected recently, and I was brought on board Terra Firma to help you and Bob grow our amazing membership. So that's why I'm here, and I'm super excited.
I always like to, in this episode or in these episodes, I always like to put my position right. Like, I'm just good at asking questions. Bob's good at giving answers. And there's sometimes I think Erin and I will have different perspectives or questions that we'll be asking Bob where he can share his wisdom with over 2 decades of experience. So Bob, can you just take us into what do you even mean by stages of an asset? What do you even mean by that?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Welcome, Erin, to Wealth Mavericks. So we're excited to have you joining us. So the stages of asset is really based on, research and studying on how the tax code works with various assets. And I first got started in understanding the different planning stages of assets when actually on the life insurance side, a lot of life insurance coaches and insurance marketing organizations, also the acronym IMOs, started talking about the 3 stages that we're going to talk about: the contribution, accumulation, and distribution, when it came to the conversation of, hey, why would you use life insurance, or more specifically index universal life, compared to a retirement account or a 401k account, IRAs, right? And so that's where really when I got that initial introduction, and I thought it was a great way of kind of just comparing different types of assets. Now, of course, in that environment, I'm trying to compare an IUL, an index universal life, is way better than a 401k or an IRA, right? That was the conversation. And but now fast forward to today, where from our consulting and tax planning and viewing and researching as an asset coach and tax strategist, looking and understanding assets and taking that initial foundation of those 3 stages and expanding it into, well, shoot, every asset goes through this. And the IRS views each of these assets differently. So one of the things we've talked about in previous episodes is the whole tax planning thing. And taxes are a byproduct of what an asset does. So for example, Joe, when you go for a run or a hike, how do you feel afterwards?
I mean, I feel amazing.
Yeah, I'd probably be dead, but
tired.
that's a byproduct of what you did. That's a result of you doing something. And you doing something is an action. And so assets take action. The different thing is that they don't actually have a brain and they're not tangible enough to make decisions. We do. So we, being the only asset with the brain, have to, in a plan, tell the asset what to do. As a byproduct, it creates a tax, or more importantly, creates an income that creates a tax. Okay. So as I started diving into it a little bit more, these stages became a little more alive when it came to various assets. And so I started developing this explanation of understanding taxes by understanding assets first. So again, my title is an asset coach and tax strategist, is purposely in that order because assets create the result of what a tax could be, which could be zero. That could be the result. You going for a run, you feel great. Me going for a run, I don't feel great. Same action, different
Right.
result.
Different result as a result of that action.
Correct.
So, Bob, can you give us just some examples, like different types of assets and how they're taxed? Because I know you and I have talked a little bit about this, that when the tax is applied based on the structure of the asset, but can you go a little bit into that? Because I think that'd help people a lot.
Yeah. So let me talk about let me highlight the 4 assets, and then we'll explain each stage. I'm sorry, the 4 stages, and explain each stage utilizing a particular asset. We'll use a 401k as an example, because that's most common. Most people understand what a 401k is. They may not know the ins and outs, but we'll go through that as our example. Okay. So the first stage of an asset is the contribution stage. It's when you're putting money into it. You're making that initial investment, right? Makes sense.
So this could be buying a home, investing in the stock market,
Yep.
and putting money in a 401k or what.
Putting money into a savings account, right? It could be anything. It's
Okay.
that initial action of I'm taking my dollars and putting it into an asset. And the reason why an asset, we got to look at the backup definition of an asset. Let's use Robert Kiyosaki's definition of an asset. Very simple. I love it. It says something that appreciates in value and creates income. Pretty simple. Now, that contribution is very important. So the second stage is accumulation. You can't have an asset accumulate until there's money in that. You actually made the action of contributing money into that asset. Then the point of an asset is to appreciate, which means accumulate. Okay, so it grows. So then the third stage is distribution. The whole point of an asset is to appreciate and to create income. Distribution. Okay, so that's the third stage, is distribution. Now, as I've been kind of going through and we've developed our coaching program, the Free Founder, and diving a little bit more into the mindset of tax planning and the mindset of growing a business and increasing it of value, a business valuation of a business, so they sell it as a greater amount, that creates a taxation. And so as I started diving a little bit more into what's that look like, I kind of realized, oh shoot, distribution is not necessarily the last stage. Transfer is the 4th stage. Now, transfer could actually, you can't transfer unless you have a distribution. A distribution is basically saying I'm moving value out of a particular asset into another one. That's transfer, if you're not using that as income. Right? So that's the 4th stage. And we all transfer certain aspects of what we do, right? It's just an action and there's a byproduct. So for example, if I shook your hand, we would transfer skin cells to each other in our hands. We don't know it, but that's what happens, right? From that perspective. Now, if I were to write you a paycheck, that's a transferring of assets, right? So it's a very important thing. And I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about this, but when we're talking about exiting, selling a business or going through that process, or you don't have a business and you're in life and you're trying to create a legacy, that's what you're doing. You're transferring value. Okay. So those are the 4. All right. And we clear on that? Any additional questions that popped up that you want me to clarify?
Yeah, I've got a question. So Can you give an example of like all the way through, especially when it comes to tax, like taxation?
Mhm.
Give an example of like why someone would choose one asset versus another and like what those stages look like.
So let's use 401ks as an example. And then as I go through, we'll compare it to other assets, right? Because each asset has a different purpose. It's kind of like a tool belt, right? You have a tool belt because you have different tools. Each tool is used different for a different outcome. You use a handful of tools to have an even better outcome. So you can use one tool, but eventually your hammer can't screw in a screw or cut open a box. Well, it could, but who knows what's in that box if it comes out okay, right? So you have to have multiple tools to create an even better outcome. And that's what assets do as well. And that's what the planning process is. We do a lot of things and don't think about it, right? We put on a tool belt, put all these tools, and when we go do something, we don't think about what we're doing for that outcome that we're trying to accomplish. It's a little harder when we're talking about building wealth and saving taxes and accumulating. It's a little harder to understand the steps that we're doing because there's things that we actually don't know. Just like I don't know construction. So I can have a tool belt, I can have all these tools, but some of them I don't even know what the heck to do with because I don't know that area. So let's use 401k as an example. I am an employee and I decide I want to invest $10,000 a year into my 401k. Okay. Now I get the opportunity as a contribution. The government says, oh, you don't have to pay taxes, income taxes on that $10,000 because it's a tax deductible expense. Okay. So meaning now I make $100,000 a year as my example. I put 10,000 into my 401k. I defer it. I make it a contribution into my 401k plan. So now my taxable income is 90,000. Because this 10,000 is non-taxable. That's the contribution. Make sense?
Mhm.
So what if I were to do a Roth IRA? Okay, let's just say the rules allow you to put 10,000 into a Roth IRA. I know the rules don't allow you, but let's just say it just for comparables. I take $10,000 I put into a Roth IRA. Well, I have to pay taxes on that 10,000 still based on the rules.
In the contribution phase.
On that contribution phase. Yeah. So with a Roth IRA, I decide I'm not going to put money into my 401k. I'm going to take that 10,000. I'm going to put it into a Roth IRA. Okay. Well, I'm being taxed on 100,000 of income because that 10,000 into a Roth is not a deductible expense. So therefore that contribution is taxable as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first stage. Now, before I continue, we're not giving investment advice, right? This is all educational purposes only. We're just giving examples and trying to help people to understand. So if I'm talking about a Roth IRA or talking about a particular investment or strategy, we're not telling you to do it. It's just using these as an example for education.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wealth Mavericks podcast. This turned into a little bit longer of an episode than we thought it was going to be. And so we've broken it up into a couple of episodes talking about the stages of an asset. So join us on our next conversation where we're going to talk about the accumulation phase of an asset. And as always, if you want to be part of the conversation, feel free to leave a comment on this video or send us an email, however you need to get in touch with us. But we'd love to build content for what you're looking for and what we'll need filling your needs. So until next time, go be a Wealth Maverick.